I've seen things people wouldn't believe.
Yeah, I've just seen God.
You did what?
Just seen God.
Did you?
Yeah.
What did he look like?
Look like me.
How do you mean?
It was a double to me. Well, it's written in the Bible, isn't it? God made man in his own image.
Yeah, but not a specific man.
No, but if you'd spoken to him, it would have looked like you. But you didn't. I did. And it looked like me.
Are you the first? The first one. Visitor? I've always been visited. On my own planet we found evidence of visitors. You must have seen them here.
No, I don't think so.
Well, I've seen them. Seen their footsteps and their places.
I've seen those things. We've all seen them. That's for theorists. I'm a scientist.
I'm not a scientist. But I know all things begin and end in eternity.
Good evening, and welcome to a Sunday night version of Free Association Radio, aka Sunday Far. It's been a while since I have been on a pilot of the Sunday night show, and now that football season is nearly over, yes, I know, it is a distraction. I can't help myself. It is the one place where the human drama still has a fictional merit for me on some level, and I'm still pulled to it. So Sunday nights are now void of football, and it means I need something to do with my time, and I'm back here on the air with you. And of course, the tradition of Sunday nights has always been about having guests on and taking a fair amount of time to find out about a particular person, their work, subject matter. 2 hours is a long time to kind of stretch out and have a real dialogue with somebody. Now, obviously, we don't spend 2 hours with one guest, but it does happen. I mean, if it's going good and we're humming, 2 hours can go by really quickly, especially when we get some calls. And over the past year, and I've been on for almost a year now, I started this in February, we've had some great Sunday night guests. We've had Alan Howarth, we've had Jay Widener, we've had Ruth Gunter, who is really not very well known, but she was an absolutely terrific guest. Who else? Patricia Corey's been on. Andrew Harvey's been on Sunday nights. So Sunday nights has been a real rich mine for me to reach out and talk and connect with people and get into some serious subject matter. And tonight is no different. Tonight, in a minute or two, hopefully, I'll be joined by Vincent Vieluf. And Vincent is an actor, he is a writer, he is a director, and I believe he's also a composer. We'll talk about him regarding his composing. And he is, I guess you would call him in Hollywood parlance, kind of a Renaissance guy. And I discovered Vincent through a movie which came out this past year. Even though the date of the movie is 2006, I think it finally hit some form of distribution this past year. And the movie is called Order of Chaos. And I felt like it was one of the most compelling directorial debuts I've seen in quite some time for a number of reasons. And we'll get into some of those reasons on perhaps the more exo-political and esoteric level, when Vincent or Vince, we'll find out what he prefers when he gets on the show, we'll find out, we'll dive into it fairly deeply. Stylistically, it reminded me a fair amount of Darren Aronofsky in some of his early work, with the cuts and the editing, going from fast to slow, and sort of phase shifting between characters and scenes. And I believe he did the film on a budget of $1 million, which, if you know anything about doing a movie, is almost impossible. And it was a very credible first effort. Okay, so I'm setting the stage when Vincent calls in, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what happened in Arizona this weekend, because it dovetails pretty well, or I wouldn't say well. There is an interesting echo as it relates to what happened in Arizona this weekend. One of the things that Order of Chaos talks about is predictive programming, and we'll get into it in greater detail as it relates to the film. But what happened this weekend in Arizona was shocking on a number of levels, and at the same time it wasn't. If you've been following sort of what's been taking place and unfolding in the general political and meta theater, it actually makes some twisted and perverted sense. So let's not waste any more time here. Let's bring Vincent on. Let's talk to him. Let's find out who he is, what he's up to, and where we can take this discussion tonight regarding his film and some of the current events of the day. Hi, Vincent. You're on the air. Welcome, and thanks for joining us tonight.
Hey, Robert. How are you, man?
I'm good, man. I'm good. How are you down there?
I'm good. I was just listening to you. It's trippy times, huh?
These are absolutely bizarre times, and wow, they're scary times too, because I mean, I just saw the Keith Olbermann. You know, people on my Facebook page urged me to watch the Keith Olbermann video about this, and within the first 2 minutes, he threw out the word domestic terrorist, which automatically was a red flag for me. And then he got into this really self-righteous diatribe about the dialogue and the rhetoric and dialing it back, and it's like, Keith, look in the mirror, man. I mean, you've been a part of this. You are culpable. How dare you get in front of these cameras and scold us? I mean, I just thought it was the biggest piece of, pardon my expression, bullshit I've seen.
Yeah. I can't even look at anything mainstream anymore, because to me, like, the blanket over this whole thing is, it's like I've studied conspiracies, like most people, until I've gone crazy, and then I wound up completely sane, that sort of thing.
That's right. You come through the other side. That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And it's like you go through a gauntlet of greed and bizarreness until you go, everybody's weird, and everybody who is involved in politics or media, which are the exact same thing because the same corporation owns them, it's like they're going, freak out, and then they're reporting on people who freak out.
Right. Right.
That's
absolutely. Absolutely.
They're so creating this, man. It's like, I really, when I was younger, I didn't give much stock to so many of the more hippie-ish or spiritual aspects of things. But now that I'm seeing it, I'm watching pigs killing pigs. And it's like, you know what? You reap what you sow. And I do believe that, like, normal people with good hearts are going to come out of this totally okay.
I love that.
Don't you think people are just eating each other right now? I mean,
Oh, it
They've
feels
created
that way.
monsters.
Yeah, no, the creation of monsters, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, absolutely. And I don't think we've even seen we're just seeing the tip of this right now, and what I saw with Olbermann, quite frankly, was pornographic. I mean, it was bad pornographic in terms of his commenting on the exact events that he was on some level he was endorsing and helping to create, and it's just utterly bizarre. And the weird thing about this, Vincent, is that on some level, right, we need to be sensitive. I mean, here's people died, and nobody digs that, and there are families involved and friends involved, but at the same time, we have to step back and we have to really look at kind of what's going on and what's coming out of this. So we have to stay in touch with our hearts, to your point, and at the same time use our heads to kind of go, you know what, something about this isn't quite right, and let's dig a little bit deeper and not get completely molded by the perceptions that the media now is just hammering away with the people.
I don't know how I don't know how much longer people are going to keep buying it.
It's true. And
I think that's going to be, I think we're hitting a massive tipping point, and then all hell is going to break loose for like 6 months. I'm seeing totally normal people who just look dazed in their eyes,
Yeah.
It's like it's sort of like wolf has been cried so many times.
That's right.
That people are going, why are you screaming? You know what I mean? I'm going to the market. I get along with everybody. I mean, it's common knowledge that 95% of all violent crimes are committed by people who know the people.
Right.
It's domestic violence, it's a drug deal going wrong. It's the same BS, right?
Yeah.
All other violent crime in the world is war-related, government greed-related. So in other words, it's like 7 billion people getting along, except for this one tiny group. It's like the world is okay. Who is trying to continuously tell us it's effed up and we're bad people? And it's like, who are these people? Do you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
I don't know. I hang out mostly, I'm as white as it gets, all the way down to the genetics and all the way down to the even philosophies and things like that. Like, I love the history of my own culture. Like, you and I emailed each other a couple times about Norsk mythology and these things. And most of my friends are Asians and Mexicans, and I think that's mostly because I just live here in L.A.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how in this multicultural world I'm literally living in, we never talk about these kind of things. And yet, if you turn on the news, it's nothing but strife. If you look at politics, like this lady Deb Aquila told me, politics is celebrity for ugly people. And I was like, that's right. You know what I mean?
Well, if you've ever looked at Harry Waxman, that would be absolute gospel and truth, because that guy, I have to say, is one of the least attractive humans I've ever seen. That's I think that's a really good transition to talk about your film, which I talked about in the intro a little bit here, Order of Chaos, because the backdrop of the film, there's a constant media. There's white noise literally throughout the film, and it's deliberate. And you're talking, sort of the backdrop is what's going on with the mortgage crisis, the housing crisis, war. I mean, there's literally a narrative which is this all these memes that are being sort of broadcast in the background, which is exactly what you're talking about, because if people are listening and dialed into the mainstream media, it is the soundtrack of noise in their lives. And yet, at the same time, what I thought was really interesting about what you were doing was that on one level, it was noise, but on another level, if you were really paying attention, you were actually bringing information sort of, to the foreground with what you were doing. I thought it was a great technique, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that and just kind of the genesis of the film. I mean, how did you come to decide that you wanted to do it and then, get the gumption and, the nerve to raise the money and get the actors? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, I kind of hit a point, like, looking up some things about you. I know your father passed away. My mom got sick, and my mom passed away, and just the absolute punch in the stomach and the heart, it was kind of like a blessing and a curse type of thing. It was like, I really was looking at my career and stuff, which my career has always just been about fun for the most part.
Right.
Didn't care, I was doing a lot of goofy comedies and stuff, and I was making money and going out with ladies, and everything was peachy. And then my mom and I, we used to always talk about aliens and conspiracy and stuff. We were just really into fringe things.
Right.
And as she had gotten sicker and these kind of things, it was amazing how the closer we got to, like, who we were as individuals trying to love each other and know each other, the less and less we paid attention to external noise. Like you said, that white noise that's constantly going on in society. And I became fascinated with watching people and listening to people like Alan Watt cutting through the matrix, who I'm sure you know who he is a bit,
Yep.
I started feeling like, not that I needed to preach about something or anything like this, but I thought, wouldn't it be cool to hold up a mirror? What if, like, Indians don't like their picture taken because it'll capture their soul or whatever. It was sort of like using the camera as a mirror.
Right.
And that's how the idea of that movie came up. It's really, to me, it's a movie in a movie, and of course, I'm going to say right now, I really appreciate you even wanting to talk about it, because I know I could have done a lot better. But it was my first one, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
But the producer, Gil Cates Jr., he and I were both going through breakups at the time, and we were like, let's do something that's just like a kick in the balls, that's completely anti-Hollywood. Because Hollywood, is owned by the same corporations Fox News is, Clear Channel, all of it.
Right.
It's all just one big umbrella group, right?
Yeah.
So we were like, let's really just do something and see what happens. And that's just through a conversation, that's how that came up. And we pulled a lot of favors to pull it off, that's for sure.
Well, you had a terrific cast, and you had Rhys Coiro and Milo Ventimiglia and Mimi Rogers and Samantha Mathis, and really just excellent actors. And I thought the chemistry between Rhys and Milo was terrific. And
very trippy dudes, by the way. Everybody that got involved in this movie, the whole idea of Kismet and stuff, really trippy people. Like, Rhys is a crazy guy, He really is. He slept in the production office. He'd show up at my house at 2 a.m. holding a glass of wine and a hot dog and be like, what are you doing? Just a really weird group of people, man.
Mimi Rogers, she's pretty out there, isn't she?
Yes. I couldn't get a handle on her. I find her attractive and incredibly intelligent, and there's a whole world of her past I didn't dare delve into.
Right.
Whether it was Scientology or Tom Cruise and all that,
Yeah.
But I was shocked. I was shocked these people wanted to do the movie, but that's how it happened. The script went out to a couple of managers here in L.A., specifically Matt Luger, And he kind of was like, you know what, let's see what this turns out like. And he just gave it a shot with his talent, you know.
Well, she was perfectly cast as Rhys's boss, the ball-busting boss. So she was amazing in that role. And, I had wondered what happened to Samantha Mathis because, she came on like a firecracker when she was in that film with Christian Slater. And, I saw big things for her, and then I didn't hear about her for a while. I thought she was terrific in that movie, by the way.
Yeah, she's great, She comes from such an old-school Hollywood family. Yeah. From what I understand, we shot the movie in 12 days, so it was like I didn't get to know these people that much.
Right.
But, she does a lot of theater. She does a lot of things. She keeps herself busy and very artistic, I don't think she cares too much.
Well, the scene, and I'm going to play that scene, the one that you sent me, with her and Rhys. So let's just set the stage for people, because a lot of people haven't seen the film, and I highly recommend that if you're into predictive programming, you're into problem, reaction, solution, you're into some of the stuff that Vincent and I are talking about, this is one of the few films that I've seen that is honest and takes a really intriguing look at the subject matter that is covered on my show and a lot of the blogs that are associated with people that I know. And so the movie starts off with it's kind of like it has kind of an overtone with what's the film with I'm drawing a blank now. Rob Lowe
Bad
and James
Influence.
Bad.
Yeah,
it's got
Bad
kind of
Influence.
a Bad Influence feel. Meets American Psycho. Rhys Coiro plays a repressed character. He's working at a tax law firm, and he meets theoretically by chance, he meets Rick, who is going to change his life, and he's in a marriage, or he's about to be married with the Samantha Mathis character, and he's unhappy, and everything begins to unfold from there. And there's a very powerful scene where Rhys's character John is starting to wake up out of his haze, and he walks into a room, and something interesting is going on there. Now, for some people, unless they're paying attention, Vincent, they may not be aware that she's actually having a phone conversation with Rick. Now, I mean, you could be thinking, well, maybe he's imagining this. He might be hallucinating, which is again another layer of the film, because you're never quite sure what's quite real in this movie, which is fascinating. Yeah.
See, all right, just a tiny little tidbit about John is the more he started to open his mind, okay, the more Milo's character started opening his mind, the more his own insecurity began to create his reality. The more power he got, the more self-esteem he got, the more he was creating his own reality.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? He started seeing the conspiracies in his own life because he started seeing them in the outer life.
Right. That's an interesting sort of double narrative that does take place in that. So let's go to the first scene. Let's go to the scene where Rick and John, they meet. They live in the same condo complex, and this is where Rick, played by Milo Ventimiglia, is imparting his wisdom and take on life to John. Here we go.
My philosophy is know thyself. That's it. Look, you're on the John train, man. Your life is the track that you're heading down. And the most anyone can ever do is have their train running right next to yours, right? Because that's their life. If you know in your balls where you're headed, if you know who you are, then all you have to do is look to your left and look to the right and see who's keeping up. Everybody else can kiss your fucking ass. It takes balls to be an individual. Society doesn't teach you that skill, but it rewards it. And that's how successful people live. Independently.
Wow. He nailed that thing, didn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, Milo Milo got it, man. He gets it, you know. He gets it. That's a guy that creates his own freaking world. He's extremely powerful. To even be around, he's a very trippy guy, man.
Well,
Yeah.
he was on 24 for a while, right?
I don't know that.
Yeah,
I only know him from Heroes.
I think, yeah, that's right. He was on Heroes. I think he had a slight recurring role on 24. The interesting thing about that piece of dialogue is that I completely agree with what he's saying, but if you take that too far, then you're in this realm of psychopathology, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's actually rewarded for his psychopathology inside the corporate structure.
Yeah. It's the danger of any philosophy, the danger of any belief, any religion. I mean, anything that is held on to, you know, power corrupts, man. Plain and freaking simple, in my opinion. Like, you know, the word insanity literally means insanity. You believe that your sanity is right. You're in it. That's just what the word insanity means. So, in other words, you know, everybody's kind of crazy. I don't know what my point was, bro.
That's okay. No, I get it because there are elements in Rick that are quite sane, you know.
Yeah.
And there are elements in Rick where he is just a freaking psychopath, and there are elements in John where he's a basket case, but there are also elements in John that are absolutely righteous and just and moral. You know, it's a fascinating convergence between these two guys who are really complex characters, and I think in a lot of ways we're all kind of like that as well.
Yeah, I definitely am either Milo's character or John's character, depending on what 5-minute segment you catch me in, if you know what I mean. I am either, you know, in one thought, I can be the highest and best I've ever been, and then I go, yeah, but where the hell am I? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, I believe what everything Rick says is true and good, but I also believe that some of the crap he says, he just read it and he doesn't quite get it. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean, and at the same time, he is willing to sacrifice a friend, or he's willing to sacrifice his ethics in order to get ahead. So he could believe that what he is saying is absolute gospel, but on the other hand, it is completely and utterly psychopathic. And then you get into this play of opposites with the two characters, because without Rick, I mean, John doesn't really open up, right? I mean, John is going down a medicated path towards...
He's too medicated, yeah.
Yeah.
His whole life is what I should be doing. He does everything he thinks he should do. Then he turns into what he could do, what he can do. You know what I mean? It's sort of a robot becoming an animal. And it's like, where's the soul in any of these people, you know? It's like the Hawaiians and their belief of the 3 selves. Your body, you know, which is your physical self, your mental self, then your spiritual self, your 3 selves. And some people are walking around completely locked in carnality. You know, it's either sex or money or this or that. And then some people are just totally what it should be. You know, I think the idea of Nazis is a group of people who were totally just logically like, you know, and everything else had to be destroyed. And it's like, life is about texture, you know. A meal isn't good unless you got subtleties going on. Sex isn't good unless you got more going on than just sex, you know.
Speaking of sex, that was a great sex scene in that movie.
Thanks.
No, it was great. What was the name of the actress that John was with, the gal from the club?
Suzanne Ward.
Wow, she was smoking in that movie.
So sexy, so down for the part. You know what I mean? Not a big role. You know that one scene where they're just smoking cigarettes and it's sort of a musical montage?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a big dialogue scene. I hated taking the dialogue out of it, but the movie just, by the time I got to editing, it just felt better flowing along. But she's a really good actress, man. And I want my next thing to be 100 times more violent, 100 times more sex, and 100 times more soul. You know, I love sex in movies, man. I love, don't you? Like, I love the old French films. I love Italian films. I love all that stuff because when, you know, a film to me is like a moving picture, literally. Like, I go into somebody else's life for a minute, and if anything stays with me afterwards, that's just icing on the cake. For most part, I just like to escape.
Right.
To go for a ride, you know, pure entertainment. And it's just like the way somebody has sex says everything about them.
I agree. Sex and dancing. I think you can derive a lot of information from A, if people dance or not, and B.
On that note, I'll never dance again. Don't be saying that.
Well, it was a smoke and sex scene, and there was definitely some chemistry there, and you know, it worked. It totally worked. And what was it like to film that sex scene, by the way? I mean, those aren't always easy things to film.
Yeah, they're not. Of course, the way it turned out, we were on time restraints that day, so I literally had people doing the countdown on how much time. You know, you're only allowed a 12-hour day, and on a SAG-modified low budget like we had, we could not go over the 12 hours, you know, and it was literally down to the second. So they were like, I mean, I'm like, put your hand on his dick, and then you hear in the back, 30 seconds, Vince, seriously, man, wrap it up. I'm like, touch her tits, touch her tits. So it kind of like added to it all. And my director of photography, I'd worked with him before, Tom Harding, a bizarre German guy, really good. You know, we had this thing where it was like follow the energy with the camera. When we started the film, it was all on sticks. You know, it was all on tripods, everything very sterile. And the more he started tapping into his animal side, the more we started taking that camera off the tripod until the end where it's a frenzy, right?
Yeah.
During that sex scene, it was all about just follow the energy. So the actors really blocked it, did everything. I was like, just go. You come in, you're drunk, you know what I mean? You're letting it all go. And it's like, I did those intercuts with Sam and those things because you know how sex is. It's not that you're thinking about somebody else, but you're, in a weird way, sex is therapy, you know. All the things that can be let go of and all the things you can move beyond because pleasure, there's freedom in pleasure. You know, lightning actually doesn't strike you no matter what rabbis and priests tell you. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think God has serious sex. I think angels have orgies. That's serious, bro.
I love it, man. I love it. Well,
let's serious.
Let's transition to a scene that is sexual, but not as sexual as the final sex scene. This is with Rhys and Samantha. Now, why don't you go ahead and set the stage for this scene, because I think you could probably do it better than I can.
Okay. In context of where our lead character is, John, he had just lost his job, lost his entire reality as far as everything that he had been working for. And when he gets home, all that he has is that reality that he actually created, which is debt, which is lovelessness, which is all of these things. And so the first place he goes to is he's the biggest victim in the world, you know? We don't actually know where his wife's head is at. As far as, is she screwing around with Rick? Was she talking to Rick on the phone? We don't know all of those things, and just like John, we never find out because he never freaking asked. These are all about his conclusions, and sort of like the movie Falling Down with Michael Jackson. This is the white man's nervous breakdown.
All right, so let's play this. Let's play this scene. And to be fair, I whittled this down a little bit, Vincent, and I got to the dialogue, but there is a fair amount of atmosphere and tension in trying to figure out who Samantha Mathis is talking to on the phone, and then John comes in and begins to make his assumptions. Here we go. Okay, this is not happening. Let me revert to this. Hold on. I'm going to do this on the fly. Hold on. Let me do this.
Just play another movie, they'll never know.
All right, so I've unplugged here, and let me find the original piece you sent me, and I'm just gonna play. Hold on one second here. Let me just grab this sucker, and it's around here. Where'd you go?
You know what I wanted to ask you, Robert?
What's that?
Can you talk and do what you're doing?
Yeah, go for it, man.
Oh, well, you know how he comes in, you know, and it's after the moment with the parking attendant and all that, you know.
Right.
Well, in that scene, the reason it's such a long build-up before he talks to her is he hears her in the other room, and it's almost like he's using his senses for the first time.
Oh,
do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he's listening, he's smelling, he's looking, and it's almost like he's so in tune with his surroundings, and he never has been before.
Right. Hold on, here we go. Let me see if I can get this. Hold on. This is the wrong scene. Damn, I'm sorry about this, Vincent.
That's cool.
We're having a bit of a technical issue.
I can't believe you even want to talk to me, man.
Hold on. All right, so there we go. So what are you working on now? I want to get back to the film again, but what are you working on now? Are you doing another feature? Are you in a movie? What's happening now?
Well, right now I'm in pre-production on my next feature I'm going to direct.
Okay.
And I don't want to talk about it too much, but the interesting thing, I'll talk about it, and it's to all, you know, young filmmakers out there, or, you know, kids who are listening that one day want to be making films, is I'm working a lot right now with those 7D Rebel T2i cameras, you know, those new little Canon DSLRs, whatever they're called.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. You know, we shot Order of Chaos on a little Canon camera I had. And I just want to say to everybody, you don't have to ask permission from anyone anymore to do anything. Go shoot the movie you want to shoot. The technology is there, man. Like, this next thing I'm working on, I'm going to do it all.
Oh, good.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear you.
I'm going to do it all. So I've been experimenting a lot with my new camera. It only costs $1,200, man. You know.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and this is going to be, a good-looking, dope movie.
All right, here we go. I think I got the scene with Rhys. Hold on, here it is. Hold on. Here we go.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear it?
I can't hear it.
Okay, so this is just for me. Sorry about that. So you basically have a $1,200 camera, and you're doing everything with this thing, and so it really opens up the possibility for people to have their ideas and their vision and their passion come to fruition. Now, what's it like for a guy like you who has the sort of perceptions and take on reality that you and I are talking about? What's it like living in LA? Because it's got to be different down there to pierce through that veil of illusion and navigate through that world. What's that like?
It's heaven and hell I can't tell you. I would say half of my conversations with my friends are about moving out of here. But then I am so out of the loop of Hollywood, and I always have been. You know, I've been here 15 years and living on films for 15 years. You know, since American Werewolf in Paris, and it's a great place. It's a dream because not much changes. It's specifically the obvious stuff like weather, you know what I mean?
Right.
The people are very transient. You're constantly moving to different little neighborhoods and stuff. But I've made such a group of friends, like I was saying, mostly like hang around in Koreatown a lot. I've gotten addicted to a lot of things LA offers because I would say only about nowadays, honestly, I'd say only about 15 to 20% of this town is invested in entertainment. The rest of it is just huge chunks of it look like Mexico. Huge chunks of it look like, you know, Seoul. I mean, Korea. It's heaven and hell. I don't know how to explain it more than that.
Well, it's a fascinating place in that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, I can go to neighborhoods where I definitely go to places where I'm the only white person and the only person who speaks English. I hang out in these restaurants and these clubs and stuff, you know. So it's just always an adventure for me because I live a very solitary life. Like, I can disappear and write for days, you know. Mm-hmm. And I prefer to live that way. It's sort of like when I go out to do anything, it's sort of a hit and run situation. Like, I peek my head out of my house and for 2 weeks I go crazy. But I only do that once every 6 months or something, usually.
Right.
So, you know, LA is a good place for that. And also, if you live that kind of a life, it's very healthy and it doesn't cost much. I mean, there was years, you know, that I wasn't making any money at all.
Yeah.
And I was still able to survive, and the weather was always nice, and all the cliches are absolutely true. It's sort of a dream here, you know. I plan on kind of getting more in the Northwest, though. Like, I'm checking out Portland a little bit more, Portland, Oregon right now.
Right.
I'm kind of missing being up in nature and being in the seasons, you know. I come from Chicago, where I lived from when I was 18 to 25.
Right.
And it's something about you and your friends going through the seasons together that I think bring people a little closer together because you sort of see changes happen. And you realize you're getting older. Here you just don't realize anything.
Yeah.
It's very easy to stay with your head in the clouds here, you know.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's a real self-contained kind of environment in Los Angeles. It's a bubble.
But as far as the business, I don't hang out in it very much at all. I do not go to, like, if you see me at some trendy club or something, it's because I was invited and somebody that I work with told me I had to go. You know, I had to go say thanks to a producer. That's why I'm at, you know, Bar Marmont or whatever.
Right.
I'm just not into that scene. I like more like funky ethnic stuff, you know. And LA's got it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the crazy thing about LA is they've got these little like neighborhoods, like you were talking about, that have just, you know, sprouted up like mushrooms over the last 25 years. I mean, neighborhoods that weren't even there before, like Little Ethiopia, you know, little Israel, Little Korea. I mean, it's wild, man.
Yeah.
It's absolutely wild, and yeah, you could definitely take some journeys in those places. Yeah,
you know, Thai Town only sprung up in like 1980, I think, or something like that. And on the books, there's 80,000 Thai people living here. But off the books, there's almost 250,000. That's the weird thing, like the census and stuff, don't even be believing that. I mean, the population is quadrupled since I've been here.
Yeah.
Don't you think? Like, hasn't it been like 280 million people since you were a baby?
Oh, dude, it's, yeah, the census are, I mean, I used to live in San Diego, and the population, the stated population, and the actual population were two different animals. Wasn't even close. I mean, the amount of Mexican nationals and people from El Salvador and Guatemala, it was just off the charts. And it wasn't even close. So I agree. Yeah. Hey, I wanted to ask you about. There's a scene in Order of Chaos, and I wonder what kind of feedback you got on the scene. It happens twice, where John's character goes into the bathroom, and I had to watch the movie a second time to catch it. And that's where he's looking into the mirror, he's splashing, he's at the club, he's splashing water on his face, and the graffiti on the wall literally breathes out to him, 9/11 was an inside job.
Yeah.
Now, I understand as a filmmaker who wants to get information out there why you would put that in there, and I thought it was absolutely brilliant that you use it as graffiti and you use it in this kind of semi sort of medicinal, psychotic alcohol haze he's in. Like, is it real? What kind of meaning does it have? And yet it's kind of getting through to the person on the other side of the viewing experience, i.e. me or somebody else that's watching the film, making them think. How did that come about? What kind of feedback did you get from those scenes?
As you can imagine, it depended on exactly how the person watching it perceived whether 9/11 is an inside job or not. If somebody's mind isn't even open to look into it, then they thought it was bullshit. Then they thought it was just, it's just adding to his paranoia, or they thought, I actually had quite a few people just kind of disengage from it because they didn't know what I was trying to say.
Right.
In the movie, it doesn't really matter what I was trying to say because it's in the American lexicon now. The government screwed up. It doesn't matter if they did it or not. I mean, the very fact that nobody knows who knew what. They had detained Israelis. Dick Cheney even talked about it. They had those Israelis all celebrating, and the fact that 30,000 people usually work in those buildings, and they, how many of them were tipped off to get the hell out of there.
Right.
Everything that's gray, it's the government's fault. Because if they really know, then they could come out and say it. You know what I'm talking about?
Well, I do.
Yeah.
I do. I absolutely do. And Larry Silverstein didn't miss a breakfast for the entire time he owned those buildings, which wasn't very long, by the way. I mean, if you know much about Larry Silverstein,
just until that insurance claim went through. But go ahead.
Yeah. No, I mean, he went to Windows on the World every day, rode that elevator right to the top of the World Trade Center, had his breakfast, and that's how he started his day. And that day, Larry Silverstein didn't make that elevator trip. And that's just another little factoid, surrounding many of the factoids. See, I think 9/11. I think it's the Gordian knot. I really do, and I think that if they ever opened up another investigation of 9/11, which I hope that they do someday, if they did that, I think we'd have the opportunity to untie this Gordian knot, which has just been getting more and more knotted ever since then, starting with the Patriot Act, the Patriot Act 2. And everything else that, TSA scanners, everything else that's cascaded out of 9/11. And I think the American people, I know first responders, families that have had people that have perished, in the Twin Towers, these people deserve another look into what happened. And you get a guy like Mark Ruffalo, who really stuck his neck out. And you know what happened to his brother, right? Are you familiar with this?
No.
So Mark Ruffalo, great actor, and he was the guy that he narrated. I think it's the documentary Gasland. And he's caught some flack over that. And he was in Zodiac with Robert Downey, amongst a number of other films. Anyway, he came out and said that we needed to have another investigation into 9/11. And not long after that, his brother was killed. Okay, his brother, quote unquote, died, was killed. So this is a clear message to Mark Ruffalo and people unaligned in the entertainment industry that you better keep your mouth shut. And it was absolutely tragic. And the guy's got a lot of balls because then he went out and he did this documentary on Gasland. But we need to. I think the American people deserve another examination of what really happened. And we're living in this culture of denial, and we're living in this culture of post-traumatic shock. And all that happens now is more post-traumatic shock layered on top of post-traumatic shock.
Yeah.
Until finally, we don't really have any ability to feel anymore. You know what I mean?
And that's why people go to a little thing in Arizona and blow some fuckers up.
Well,
they're
certainly.
creating it. They're creating it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They're either creating it directly or indirectly. I mean, it's kind of like this has been going on in my mind for a long time. You keep having this social phenomena, excuse me, that's fracturing people's emotions and psyches, and there are going to be people, either intentionally or unintentionally, that are going to fall through the cracks, and it's like trawling for fish. You're going to catch the fish. Ultimately, people are going to snap.
And it's funny, man, because I can understand the military headset, not only because I'm related to a lot of people in the military and these kind of things, but I've read a lot. There was a time where I didn't say man every 10th word. I used to be a guy who absolutely devoured theology, devoured world history. I devoured these things because I thought I would find something of myself in them.
Right.
Wound up kind of not being the case. So it's like I did my time trying to understand the game and play the game as well as I could. So it's like I understand where this military mindset of divide and conquer comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Keep everybody compartmentalized, keep everybody chasing their own ass, and you just keep moving your own agenda little by little by little. Because I really believe that there's Rockefellers and Windsors and Rothschilds who dream of a sort of a Star Trek utopia in our future. A Roddenberry look on life.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about?
Sure.
That feel. And a lot of riffraff's going to have to be cut out of the picture before you can have that world. Because there's still tribal people we're displacing.
Right.
You know what I'm talking? There's still pagans to kill to get there. And it's like, I can understand being that cold in a really weird way, because in your heart, and like these Rockefellers, they grow up just like we grew up. It took me a long time to get past what Mommy and Daddy taught me for me to go, okay, Vince, what do you think? What do I really care about? What do I really think? So it's like these people, they have all the programming we do, maybe even more so, because they have more at stake. They have world domination at stake. So it's like I can understand why the military people keep people afraid, because it keeps people begging for war, which keeps them employed.
Right.
But at the end of the day, one day, they're going to wake up and go, I live on death and destruction. And then I think that is the whole 2012 spiritual thing everyone talks about. That sort of like point in the future where everything becomes unveiled. I think people are going to realize, like, I'm living on death over here. You know,
Yeah.
if you went to Iraq, all the people who died in Iraq probably don't, very few of them have shit to do with anything. And by the way, we haven't really had a good explanation as why in the hell we're there, have we?
No.
You know what I mean?
That's the Gordian knot. It goes right back to 9/11 and the Twin Towers, and they inserted that meme while everybody was in a state of collective shock.
And, you know, just watch all the gun control laws they're going to try to pull out of their ass by creating a maniac who goes and kills people.
Problem, reaction, solution. We're going to see that with this, and we're going to see.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to see, you know, people like me, and maybe to a lesser extent you, because you're kind of, you know, you're dabbling in the realm of fiction with film, which gives you a lot of creative license. But there are people like myself on the internet doing shows like this, the blogs, and, you know, the language this guy was using, and the sort of outsider, the loner, you know, all of these attributes are going to be, you know, they're going to become labels.
Uh-huh.
And they're going to try to really, you know, fence in a lot of people who are critical of kind of what's going on right now. And
Yeah.
I could see this freight train is coming at us from a mile away. And
Dude, yeah, this is Orwellian. We're in Orwellian times of doublespeak. Bumper stickers on well-meaning people's cars that say freedom is not free. What the hell does that mean? Freedom is not free. Yeah, it is. You know what I mean?
According to the Constitution, it is. You know, and
you go to Washington,
Declaration of
D.C.,
Independence.
you know there's free zones in Washington, D.C., and in some places in New York, all federal buildings are considered speech-free zones. We're literally living in 1984, man.
Yeah, they just forgot to tell everyone.
Yeah, well, there's that famous saying, American is fascist. They call it anti-fascism.
Yeah.
I thought that was a pretty cool quote.
Yeah, it is. We're definitely. But you know, when we first started this conversation about an hour ago, I mean, one of the first things you said was that people with good hearts are going to come out of this okay, and I agree with that, and I think, and I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, Katie Galante, who's a great blogger and sort of kind of metaphysical visionary warrior. And, you know, what we were talking about was ultimately if the dialogue is going to be hemmed in and that we're going to have to theoretically watch what we say, that really what it's doing, right, is it's getting us closer in some ways to really defining, you know, who we are and why we're here as opposed to what's around us. You know, because what we're doing now is we look at the conditions and we're defining ourselves against the conditions. But really, ultimately, we have to define ourselves as who we are and why we're here, which that language, Vincent, is unassailable.
Yep. And that the world changes. The world changes with that. You know, I understand, like, I think it's a privilege that we can even have the conversation we're having. And I think 20 years ago, most humans wouldn't even know what in the hell we were talking about.
It's true.
You know what I mean? You know how a lot of these things are kind of floating in a weird way?
Yeah.
It's like, what's really strange to me is that I tell people this, and they're like, what are you smoking? But I really believe it. We're in the most peaceful time of human evolution, of human history. If one car bomb goes off on the other side of the planet and 2 people are killed, we hear about it immediately. In the 1960s, how many people were assassinated? like what just happened in Arizona. For a little while, that shit was happening once a week, man. You know,
Well,
if you go back to the French Revolution, man, there was the dudes from Enron with their heads on sticks, man. People going down the street with heads on sticks. In the 60s, tens of thousands of Americans died.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Here, it's like, what are we up to? 1,200 Americans died, and half of them are probably from messed up Humvees. You know, we're living in a time when even the sheep are going, you know, they're quoting Rodney King, man. They're like, can't we just get along?
Yeah. Yeah.
This is a crazy time. That's why I think the powers that be are pumping the fear so much. There's a billboard by my house for a new show on the Lifetime Network. And it's about Craigslist killer. Okay.
I saw that. The Craigslist killer. Yeah.
Well, picture this Orwellian world we're living in. There's a billboard down the street from my house. It has an eyeball looking at you real freaking creepy, and it shows an empty Google box, and it says, be careful what you search for.
Wow.
Okay? I don't give a rat's dick what that is advertising. The point is, like Alan Watts says all the time, psychologists and advertisers who are the same thing know it doesn't matter if something is true. If a human being subconsciously sees something 9 times, they will subconsciously believe it to be true. Whether they agree with it or not, they don't even get into that. The point is, it's now in their consciousness.
That's right.
How many people since we've been talking are subconsciously going to be a little more wary what they search for in the Google box now because of that one freaking billboard, man. And people are getting it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's the Emperor Wear No Clothes is coming. To where it's like...
Go ahead. Finish your thought.
Oh. Well, I think as opposed to revolutions, I think people are going to be shrugging, at military people who are screaming, and they're going to be shrugging, going, what do you want? Where do you want me to stand? What am I not supposed to do? There's so many laws now and stuff, it's just crazy. And weird enough, nobody even subconsciously believes in legalities anymore since the O.J. Simpson trial. I don't know how old you are, but remember how innocent people were before that?
Yeah, the O.J. event is very interesting in terms of kind of the social superstructure. I followed it very carefully, and there was a lot going on during that trial, which was absolutely mind-blowing, and the message that came out of that trial was that you can get away with murder. I mean, that's really what the message was. And there was a sense, because it was so pumped up and so microscopic in terms of how people followed it, that when the verdict came out and everybody knew all the gory details and everybody, knew all the sadistic, sort of pieces associated with it, that when he got away, it was like a movie where it's like a monster movie, right? A horror film, where you have this monster. And back in the day, there was I think it was a movie. One of the movie codes was that you had to kill the monster at the end of the movie. You had to put the monster back in the box because you couldn't let the monster out into the collective unconscious. It was part of the filmmaking sort of, commandments. And I also think maybe the movie code said something about that. So you go into the movie theater, you get the shit scared out of you, and then at the end the monster dies, you leave the movie theater, the world is safe again. Now what happened with OJ is everybody figured out that he was a monster. But at the end of the movie, he doesn't go to jail.
Yep.
And so what happens is that now psychically the monster is loose, right? Now, if the O.J. trial doesn't take place in the media, if you don't even know who O.J. and how many times have people theoretically killed their wife and their wife's BFF coke-dealing friend? Probably a lot, but because it's O.J. Simpson, it gets pumped up. We see this, and then the monster gets away. And to me, that is actually a very, very big piece to what we're talking about here, adding to this kind of what I call psychotic momentum of the latter part of the 20th and the first part of the 21st century. I think the O.J. Simpson trial is actually a big deal in that way.
It's funny, man. It's funny because it's almost like, bringing up something nobody cares about. But what's funny about it is how unbelievably important it was, because of what I noticed as somebody who, I lived in Europe for 6 months right after that. Right after that, I'd moved to France for 6 months. And so, of course, I was just talking to everybody, and everybody was like, oh, you're an American, and, everybody was giving me their take on that. And what that meant, it opened up my eyes a lot. And what's just so weird is that sometimes, do you ever do this? Sometimes I don't think there's a master plan. Sometimes I don't think there's anyone behind the curtain, like in The Wizard of Oz. Sometimes I think it's like, a bunch of rich bastards like the Federal Reserve families and stuff. Like, of course they are building this empire and stuff. I'm trying to build a studio. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, sometimes I just think it's a little more innocent and a little more like in the moment than my conspiracy side lets me believe. But the whole thing with the OJ thing and stuff like that was, it totally backfired, because every day you saw that judge next to an American flag, and right after the commercial breaks, before they went back to the trial, they would say how evidence like him fleeing with a ticket to South America with $10,000 cash and a fake beard isn't being allowed in the courtroom.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, you remember that whole little thing.
I do, absolutely.
So it's like they're saying that, and then they're cutting to an Asian man sitting under a American flag, and you're seeing it's a complete farce. It's about money.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, like, if you talk about this subversive advertising and stuff being in your lexicon or whatever after 9 times, my God, I mean, it was like respect for the entire legal system was just thrown out the window completely. And a 15, 16-year-old right now wouldn't have any idea what in the hell I was talking about, because they never lived in a world where you really thought that there was a constitution, and it was like, I really believed in mass freedom and stuff like that at one point. Now I only believe in it for myself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if I'm making any sense.
No, you do make some sense. I mean, I certainly there was a commercial element to the OJ trial. I mean, you had Court TV, right? And they were making, and you had NBC and CBS, and I mean, there was lots of money to be made, off of what was going on, and just from a social level. I mean, just prior to OJ, you had the Rodney King thing happen in L.A. And that was kind of a precursor event to what happened with OJ. And also, right around the same time, Oliver Stone did a film called Natural Born Killers. And, which is interesting, because Woody Harrelson plays one of the killers in the film, and I'm convinced that Stone chose him because his father was associated with the JFK assassination, and spent most of his adult life in a supermax prison in Colorado. So I believe that Stone looked at Woody Harrelson and said, well, there's a natural-born killer. His dad was a killer, so he must be a natural-born killer. So it was typecasting in some ways. But at the end of Natural Born Killers, right, they go on this bloody rampage, right? What happens in Natural Born Killers? It's the same thing that happens in the O.J. trial. They get out, they get off, and they're traveling across the United States in an RV.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and
in an RV.
In an RV. He and Juliette Lewis, you know, who are psychopathic murderers, are now traveling around America in an RV. And it gets back to this whole thing about putting the monster in the box. Stone did not put the monster in the box. He unleashed it into people's psyches, and it was really, I felt, to be quite honest with you, I felt Natural Born Killers was extremely dark, ritualistic, and a very dangerous movie. Because what happened after that movie, there was two kids that went on a killing spree, just like they did in the movie.
It's funny, man. I don't subscribe to the Middle Eastern gods, meaning Christianity, Judaism, and Muslim. I dig it. I've read it all. It's all cool. But that's sort of the Holy Trinity, if you know what I mean. Everybody else was a heathen or a pagan.
Right.
And everyone else has been killed, and all their old books have been destroyed. And if you're into your native stuff, then it's a little niche thing, and it's cute, and it's like, oh, isn't that nice? Jose is studying his culture. You know what I mean? It's like, but you're either a Jew, a Christian, or a Muslim now, and that's your three choices. All three of those religions, people don't put this together. They all worship the exact same God. You know what I'm saying?
I do, yeah.
It's like there's God, and then here's three little takes on it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And they've gone around the world, and they've destroyed everybody. And what's weird to me is I actually find a huge part of the entertainment industry, the music industry, everything. There is a part of me that doesn't give a crap about this, because it's like I'm able to stay in my own crazy world where it's like I play with my cat, you know, I go on dates, this kind of thing. Then there's another side going, like, what is going on? This is like almost satanic.
Yep.
You know, it's sort of like when Alex Jones busted that Bohemian Grove thing.
You're right.
I was like, oh my God, man, it's like these Babylonian people, which is what this religion and this specific God came from. It's like, it's almost like this ginormous satanic thing. I mean, that's a whole other world you can get into studying all of that. You know, that comes with theology studies, you know.
Right.
But it's like you take Natural Born Killers, or you take this dude in Arizona, or, okay, you take that guy that supposedly flew his plane into the IRS building, whatever his name was. His last name happened to be Stack.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
This is the weird predictive programming, MK Ultra, Operation Paperclip, all these bizarre things. It's like they ring of like what you would think of when you think of Satanism. You know what I mean? I mean, like, it's like it was the time when the whole Tea Party movement, before they were able to make it a joke about teabagging, and before they were able to make it about white people, and before they were able to make it about Republicans, it was people bitching that they're paying interest to a private bank called the Federal Reserve that prints our money, when in the Constitution they don't have that right. Okay?
Yep.
They don't have that right. That right was taken in 1913.
That's right.
By anyone who's read more than 4 books, and that includes Dr. Seuss. It's like, read it. It's not a conspiracy. It's true.
Absolutely.
You know, it's like, but see, people started talking about that. So then, luckily for them, a guy with the last name Stack, as in he blew his stack.
Right.
flies it into a building, and all the sheep just ignore everything they were saying 20 minutes before, and they went, people shouldn't kill people, be nice. And then that's all you heard of it. And then it was like the whole thing against the IRS and all that was just totally forgotten. And the only one that died was the dude with the last name of Stack. It was like
Right.
a little... I sometimes wonder if all this news and shit isn't just movies.
It certainly
Like,
has the feel of it, doesn't it? I mean, they're. It's like these guys. They get these guys from Central Casting. They give them these names. Like one of the guys who was behind the bailout.
I know what you're going to say. Madoff.
Well, there's Madoff, then there's Neil Kashkari, the economist that worked for the government was behind the bailout. Neil Kashkari. I mean, does it get more weird than that?
And it's so weird because it's like I bring up these things, and it's like, you know, there is an amount of like fear. I don't want to make Rockefeller mad. I mean, I don't want the IRS to like come and stick microscopes up my butthole. But at the same point, it's like, it's exactly that. It's like, here's a play going on in front of you. These guys made off with a lot of cash. The lead guy's name is Madoff.
Yeah.
He's going to get punished, and it's almost like, oh, he got punished instead of all the other ones, but somebody got punished. I'll go on to my next drama now.
Well, his kid is dead. Madoff's kid is dead.
What's that?
Bernie Madoff's kid is dead. In fact, Bernie Madoff's kid was the guy who turned him in. I mean, he basically said, you can't continue to do this. And that Bernie Madoff is in prison. And I'm sure on some level it probably, you know, it affects him, but, you know, the kid is out of the picture now. The one guy who kind of knew the ins and outs of Bernie Madoff's business because he worked for his dad, he's gone. He's dead.
Okay, you know what, Robert? On some level, every single bit of this, including you and me, is a movie playing out.
It is.
We are creating this as a group, as a consciousness. We are creating this world completely, our entire experience together. And the outcome of it doesn't seem to matter. It's almost what the role of the serial killer in society is. There is no lightning bolt. Jeffrey Dahmer's got a couple of dudes in his fridge. There's no lightning bolt stopping him. A conscientious neighbor who smelled humans rotting was the bolt of lightning that stopped Jeffrey Dahmer. Not anything else. And it's like, I think that food is going to start costing so much. Fresh water is going to start becoming so rare.
Yeah.
And people are going to get so tired of being afraid that, like that neighbor, everybody's just going to start talking.
Yeah.
And it's going to dissolve this whole bizarre thing. And it is an unveiling coming our way, man.
Yeah.
I don't think now is the time to fight for anything. I think now is the time to truly picture what you would like the world to be like. And since every thought that's held on to comes to fruition, hold on to a good thought. The minute it's there, let it go and make up a better one. You know what I mean?
No, I completely agree. I mean, that gets back to what I was talking about, you know, in terms of, you know, changing the narrative. I mean, we are on some level being forced to change the narrative. And, you know, if you go back in time, let's say you go back, you know, 5-6 years, maybe even a little bit further than that. If you go back, say 15 years, the sort of the genesis, which became kind of the nexus of the New Age movement, which was, you know, you create your own reality, you create your own thoughts, don't have negative thoughts, don't be a downer, you know, that's just negative. And so this was a very, kind of popular mindset that people tried affirmations. They went to go see Deepak Chopra, get their head straight. But what was happening was, while all these people were in a trance, all these other people were shifting the world, taking jobs to China, outsourcing, and taking a wrecking ball to the economy. Because these people were in a trance. Now, some of these people are finally waking up. And now they're looking around going, wow, I've been meditating on my navel. Meanwhile, the world that I used to know is going away, and I don't know what to do about it. And so they get into trying to understand what's going on here. They try to unravel this and unravel that. Maybe they go to Alex Jones or read the Monster from Jekyll Island. And the next thing you know, they're talking to me and you, right? And then, but that's only part of it, right? Now the next phase after that, because just as we started the program, you talked about going through the madness and coming to the other side. We come back to that point where we started, where we wanted to have a positive experience. We wanted to have a world that had vision and creativity and beauty and heart. We want all that, but we had to go through this disassembling process to see that things aren't really the way they are. Now it's coming to this point where I think that phase for people like myself and probably for people like you, that phase is coming to an end. Now we're gonna have, with everything that's gone before us, we're gonna have to vision and shape this world in a way that is really coherent, makes sense, and allows for us to care for one another. Because I think when you talk about these neighbors, sort of coming together and talking and understanding what's happening, I think it's a great metaphor for, I think, where we're headed.
I can't add anything to that, man. That's exactly what I'm thinking. I was in the trance you spoke of. I got a ball-peen hammer to my consciousness on 9/11 and some other things I opened my eyes to. It kind of woke me up from my dream world.
Yeah.
And then now I'm kind of like, okay, there is a bunch of crap, in the boiling pot of what I'm creating here for a meal. Let's start sifting through that and get rid of it. As easily as possible, like Buddha said, like water, you know what I mean?
That's right.
That's what I'm trying to do. Here's what I find interesting. I wonder if you get a lot of people saying this. A lot of people who listen to a lot of the things that are more conspiratorial or they can seem sort of downerish, if you look into them too much. It's like a lot of them say, people have said to me is like, yeah, but I'm powerless, so what's the point of it? And my thing that I've realized, and it was a revelation I had during my navel staring thing, which is, a dead serious, little chapter we went through as a culture,
right,
is consciousness doesn't demand that you do anything. You turn on the light, the cockroaches get the hell out of the kitchen, man. That's all you had to do was turn on the light. You know what I'm saying?
No, absolutely, and that is beautiful in its simplicity. Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't have to kill anybody. I don't have to bring down the Federal Reserve. I don't have to do any of this stuff. Bringing it up is enough.
Yeah.
Seeing what's going on is enough, man.
Yeah.
Interesting times, dude. I mean, interesting times. This conversation would not have made sense a decade ago. And that wasn't that long ago.
No, not absolutely right. And as we've been, sort of conversing here over the course of the last hour and a half, I've been thinking about the movie. I keep coming back to the movie, and I keep coming back to what happened in Arizona. And I swear, that guy in Arizona is John. I mean,
exactly.
He is John, and whether or not John was manipulated by the chaotic forces of noise around him, or whether he was being consciously manipulated, was Rick his handler? I mean, that's a whole other aspect of that movie Was Samantha Mathis's handler? Were they in on it together? I mean, there's so much subjectivity in that movie where you start to go off into these little alleys and you go, wow, maybe. But at the end of the day, he becomes that guy. He becomes Jared Lee Loughner for whatever reason, with his brain scrambled, going down and gunning down 6 people and a congresswoman.
Ironically, doing exactly what he was taught to do, and exactly what everything sensible in society says not to do. The Department of Defense, if you go on their website, a huge amount of their budget calls for upcoming 30 years of civil unrest and domestic terrorism. So if you think this is a crazy conversation, the government itself is saving money like good little, penny pinchers at home, putting money in their little coin jar. The government itself is planning on civil unrest for 30 years, rioting and stuff. It was like in order of chaos. When you see John at the end, and I revisit that thing that was on the BBC where it's like middle classes becoming revolutionary.
Right.
That is what was considered normal 10 minutes ago. What was the ideal 10 minutes ago? What was right and what was just and what was in the middle 10 years ago is now what's considered a freaking lunatic who's lost their fucking mind.
It's true, because John is he's waking up to the fact that the world around him is false, that people around him take advantage of him and other people like him. They're predators, they're psychopaths, and he's tried to hold on to some level of dignity and morality and doing the right thing. It's obviously eating him alive, and then he snaps out of the trance, and he goes a little too far, but he snaps out of the trance. And you're right. You're absolutely right. I mean, because what happens to him is he has kind of a moment of clarity, but it is a moment of clarity that is tinged with years of rage and suppressed rage, right?
Yeah. Every revelation I have has a moment of elation where I'm happy and I'm blown away that I see some game I've been playing in my life, an insecurity I had. Say it was an insecurity I had. Normal insecurity, whatever it is. Well, if I become aware of it, it's like, oh, thank God I'm aware of it. Now I can change. But when that elation goes away, I see that insecurity everywhere, and I now have to integrate this new way of thinking into my external life. It's almost like it happens first in my head or in my heart, and then I have to make my world reflect that. And if I hurt somebody in the past, I have to say I'm sorry to them. Or, if somebody took advantage of me, then I take them out of my phone book on my phone. And I say, you know what, I'm just going to kind of ease that person out and put them on ice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The thing is there's so many people who were such rats in the maze that they're now getting to the end of the maze and going, oh, shit, there's not a piece of cheese?
Right.
My 401k was a piece of cheese, my retirement, my Social Security. I mean, I look at my dad, and now all my work is going to be taking care of my dad. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because it's like the dude worked his whole life. He was a policeman. He was in Vietnam. Now, thank God, he's growing a lot of his own food. He's just living a more chilled life,
Yeah.
He's doing things like more pretty, more sensitive. But it's like, I want to take care of him and stuff like that, like before it was about a car or something like that. Well, it's like seeing what's happening to our senior citizens in these things. It's like, there's no piece of cheese at the end of this thing, man.
That's right.
That was a joke. Your piece of cheese right now is building a building in Indonesia.
Yeah.
So when you call Bank of America, their headquarters are in freaking India, man.
Well, they're moving their headquarters to China. We know that. So,
You know,
you're right.
You can't hide that from people, man. And when people realize that, it's sort of like the game's over. Okay, what's the new game? Well, in between that was a game and what's the new game is going to be some people venting, right?
Yeah.
They're going to be venting. And I'm staying away from that steam, man, because I think it's going to get freaky for a minute.
Well,
do you think that's going to happen?
I do. I mean, look, we're almost at $4 a gallon on gas. You know, and I find this whole concept of high gas prices to be here's what adds to the insanity, Vince. It's like we went over to Iraq. We basically took over Iraq. We have control of their gas and their oil, and yet gas and oil are going up. I mean, to me, you know, just from a completely objective, greedy, capitalistic perspective, you know, I would think that because we own that place, literally, that we would get a better deal on petroleum. But what's happening now is that they're actually raising the price of gas. It will likely be $4 a gallon within the next 2 months. It will be $5 a gallon by the time June rolls around. And there is this Maginot Line where about at $5 a gallon, you know, shit stops going to grocery stores, and because it just becomes too expensive to bring the food to market. So I think we really have about 3 to 4 months here of some wobble time before the price of gas begins to price people out of being able to get food. And when that happens, that's going to get pretty sketchy. That's when I think things are going to get people are going to get very nervous because they can't go to the market, you know, and get their Twinkies.
And that's it. It's about Twinkies and Miller Lite because it ain't about just surviving, you know.
Yeah.
I think the big snapperoo is coming, like when you just said right there, when people are going to have to start simplifying their lives. I think there's a lot of people who've been sucking on tits way too long, man. Way too long. And so that's going to be a very funky moment. As far as survival goes and like building myself a bunker and whatnot, I'd love to have enough money to have a place in the country and pull that shit off. But I don't think that's necessary because if I don't know how many people listen to your show that are going to even know, but I mean, it's like if you take a fiat money system, which is what we have, which is what Europe's had forever, it's what we've had forever, there's a systematic bubble creation, money deflation, money inflation, and all those cats who are making all those moves are buying the entire time. It's why there's really no more than like 9 corporations on the planet. You know what I mean? Almost everybody's scooped up by somebody.
Yep.
And somebody owns all of them, and somebody owns all of them. It's like, and you know how it is. You got a problem with AT&T when you call. You're only going to talk to a robot, and at the last moment, you're going to get a human on the phone, and whatever your problem is, it's not that human's job. They're not responsible for what you're calling and pissed about.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
That's a corporate structure, you know. It's like everybody knows that. But you take a place like Argentina that in 1991, when George Bush Sr., you know, the same year that he said, hey, thank God, here we are in our new world order, you know, our brave new world.
Yeah.
When Argentina's system collapsed, it's kind of what I'm expecting for everything else.
Right.
Because I read enough about it, and I have actually a good friend of mine who married a girl from Argentina, so I kind of pick her brain whenever we're hanging out, making light conversation. Everyone gets annoyed with me. But it's like in Argentina, about 6 months was just ape shit crazy.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, neighbors stealing shit from neighbors, like everything went bonkers, man.
Yeah.
But people don't have the stomach to live so unorganized. People, you know, even animals don't have a stomach to live unorganized, man. It isn't that the people turned into animals, it was that they turned into freaky humans.
Right.
You know, animals have a structure, animals have a system.
Right.
Antelopes graze next to lions because they go, that lion's not too hungry. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, so I think the United States is about to go through, and it's going to happen when the money and the gas get so expensive, it's that things can't get to the shelves, because I'd say a third of our country is pod towns, meaning our population is such that if you build a Home Depot, a Target, a Walmart, an Olive Garden, 18 McDonald's, 14 Carl's Jr.'s, 7 Starbucks, you have all those people working in one of those places, then they just go to those other places and spend money.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pod town. Nobody's producing anything. It's a pure consumer orgy.
Yeah.
It's people living, just living.
Yeah.
You know? But the truth is people say money doesn't grow on trees. Yeah, but food grows on trees, and water falls from the sky, and air is all around you.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
This is what we're going to realize, man, and that's going to be a funky-ass moment, is when all of this is for absolute nothing.
Right. Right. Well, yeah. I mean, I think that people are going to be thrust back into their relationship with nature, and hopefully, if nature isn't too toxified by barium and aluminum and all the other crap that's coming from the sky, people might actually have a chance to reacquaint themselves with nature. And I think that could be a very powerful moment. But to your point about the pod town, and I wanted to talk about this. You know, back in the day, they used to have stores with warehouse space attached to those stores, right? Like if you were to go to a department store or hardware store, it wasn't just the store. They actually had goods in the back. The guy would say, "Oh, let me go in the back and check," right? But what happened was is that the guy who's responsible for this is Rhys Coiro. And Rhys Coiro created, I think he actually stole the program from somebody. It's called Just in Time. And it's a whole shipping kind of algorithm that allows you to kind of, you know, stay on top of your inventory and then order directly to the store. Just in Time was one of the sort of driving forces behind Walmart and the big box stores, because what they did is they figured that since we don't have to have the warehouse space anymore, we could just make the stores bigger, and if we get down to like 2 or 3 of these things, it automatically gets reordered, and it comes directly to the store, not the warehouse. So the end of the day, I mean, the old days, you know, at least you had warehouses and you had goods on hand. You know, you had, you know, maybe, you know, 2 or 3 weeks worth of supplies or whatever in case your store ran low. Now, because of the just-in-time factor in ordering, when the stuff stops coming, there's nothing there. There is no back room. There is no, you know, 2 or 3 weeks worth of, you know, goods or supplies or whatever that is. And that's why that we have such a thin margin with this whole delivery system. You know, once it stops, it stops. You know, and that's Pod Town. I mean, Pod Town is the box lot store, and you know, and there's a whole psychology and sociology that's grown up around that. So
that's spooky, man. It's like, you know, they have all these sort of like algorithms, like the Department of Defense and stuff like this, in case martial law is ever declared.
Right.
Most cities only have, like, you know, one highway coming in from the south, north, east, and west. That's it.
Yep. Yeah.
And these things are designed so when the shit hits the fan, boom, you close those things off. Perfect.
That's right.
Well, can you think of anything more wonderful in controlling a human. I know LA only has 72 hours of food at any given time. 72 hours of food. And that is also their guesstimates on what normal humans have in their houses. 72 hours. And LA doesn't stop going. There's no more land in between us and San Diego. There's no more land when you go north along the PCH to San Francisco. It's not like you drive for 20 miles and don't see a house. This shit just keeps going. That's how many people are here.
Yeah.
26 million people with 72 hours worth of food. 72 hours ain't a long time. If trucks went on strike, if 18-wheelers went on strike, I know this dude that was a truck driver, man, and he had gotten to the point where diesel got so expensive they were losing money on every round. They were losing money by bringing you food.
That's right. At some point, it's just no longer cost effective to continue to do business in that way, and we're getting very close.
We're real close. Yeah. We're real close, man. When I live in California and my orange has chili stamped on it, it's like, what the hell? Did I really need this thing from Chile? You know?
Yeah.
And then you take in Monsanto and those freaks who are patenting life forms.
Right.
Not allowing you to grow, suing small farmers because pollen from their corn crop 8 miles away blew in the air and touched theirs.
Yep.
And winning in court because that judge is nothing but a whore.
Right.
Because why? In politics, man, you buy your way. You make deals to get your way up there. It's like anything else, man. We're headed for a freaky moment, bro. A freaky moment.
I totally agree. So I wanted to ask you, when you released this film, and some of the reviews started to come through, but what was there was one review I read that was fairly sympathetic to what you were doing, but I never got the sense that anybody really understood that what you were doing. Did you ever come across any critics or people in the industry that kind of got, what you were trying to do there?
Everybody but critics. Every producer that put money into this film loves it. Everybody who's seen it, it's now playing on Showtime. So, it's playing on Showtime in some instances like 7 times a day.
Right.
It's like they love it. They were at the distribution thing. Normal people like it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I will say, in all fairness, dude, and it's not sort of like there's a lot of things I could have done better. I understand that, but as far as a critic getting my point, not one of them that I know of got it. Not one of them would be able to have the conversation you and I are having because they work for a magazine that's owned by a publicity company.
Right.
They're actually not even allowed to enjoy this conversation.
Well, and even if they were, I think let's say the magazine gave them carte blanche and they could write whatever they wanted to write about. I think that they're probably so entrained that they couldn't see, what you were getting at and, the material you were working with. And that's part of their conditioning, and what
don't you think? Oh.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, bro. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and the film is actually about, breaking through your conditioning. That's another layer of the film, is breaking through the conditioning.
Breaking through the conditioning. That's what I was hoping somebody would take away from the film. Yeah. I tried to do it a story in a story. I think I lost people just talking artistically and things that I know for the future because I edited the film as well. And it was my first film, and I was pretty much the producers, God bless them, they let me throw the freaking kitchen sink in that thing, man. I got babies being sucked back up in vaginas, all kinds of whack stuff. All of it means something to me. And I didn't, and the producers were like, hey, you know, 10-4 Pictures, Gil Cates Jr. and Caitlin Murney, the angels that allowed me, in essence, and helped me make this movie as big as it was, with the actors and the equipment, a lot of the equipment and things like that. They were like, hey, this is our first movie. It isn't costing very much money.
Right.
Let it be a kick in the nuts. You know what I mean? Let it be a kick in the nuts. So there are a lot of scenes where I could have. I love Kubrick, man. Like The Shining, David Lynch, Blue Velvet.
Right.
These movies. I know there's a million places where I could have shut the hell up, not had my music come blaring in and 80 cuts to get to something. But I didn't censor myself at all. And that is the one thing I needed to do, I think. Because now it's given me the confidence to where I can go forward and tell a story without feeling like I got to slap somebody in the face to tell it.
Right.
You know, that was part of my conditioning I had to get out of because I was a goofy actor for 15 years, you know?
Right.
So a lot of these critics, I don't think they got past the point of loud banging noises coming from their left speaker and cutting to a birth scene. I don't think they went past that. I think they just checked out right then. You know?
I do, and I don't know. Maybe it's because I've been through my own madness. You know, I enjoyed it. I mean, I thought it was atmospheric. I thought it was disturbing. I thought it was multi-layered and subjective, and yet there were a number of narratives that you could follow throughout it. I wanted to ask you a question. What did your father think when he saw the film? He has seen it, right?
Yeah. This is crazy because I know, you know, I'm extraordinarily close with my dad. I know he's going to listen to this. I think he would have liked me to have made it more digestible for normal people. Meaning, I made the movie the same way Michael Moore made the movie. I'm preaching to the choir. Okay?
Right, yeah.
And there is a higher way to go about it, but to do so would almost have to be Christ-like and speak in tongues, meaning, here's my point, and everyone can understand it. You know? And my dad knows all of these topics that we've been talking about. My dad teaches me a lot of these things because he's just, maybe I tell myself it's because the years he's been alive that add wisdom to a human, but he fundamentally gets things a little deeper and a little lighter than I do. My dad's a lot more fun at a party than I am, you know what I mean? Even though I can be a maniac, but he's always a maniac, but a fun-loving maniac.
Right.
I think my dad would have liked it to be a little more digestible as opposed to so surreal, you know?
Yeah.
It's weird.
It's a difference in generations. You know?
What's that?
It's a difference in generations. You know, I mean,
yeah,
and I you know, he probably wanted something a little more literal and something he could probably, you know, hand over to his friend and say, here, you know, this is my son Vincent. He did this
without having to explain it afterwards.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but you know what? There's a part of me that doesn't give a rat's ass about the mass public.
Yeah.
I'm more and more not giving an F, dude.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean, man. I get it. Loud and clear.
More and more. I mean, like, if I could be the size of, like, John Cassavetes, I'd be happy. Make a movie every few years, you know what I mean? It's like, it does okay, it makes its money back, plus, like, you know, here's some shit to live on.
Right. Right.
I prefer that than, I don't know.
Yeah, Cassavetes made a little bit of scratch as an actor too. I mean, he'd show up in a number of films. Every now and then. He's a pretty good actor. So you're working on something now. You keep it, being the good Scorpio that you are. You're keeping it under wraps. You're working it in the subconscious realm. Any sense as to when you're going to get out of pre-production and actually do some shooting with your next film?
I'm hoping that I'll be shooting within. That happens extremely fast. The minute you put your dick on the table, it either happens or it does not. Know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
Yeah, and then when it rains, it pours, man. And it's either going to rain nothing or I'm gonna be shooting within 12 weeks.
Right.
I hope to be shooting while there's still snow on the ground.
Okay.
That's what I'm hoping.
Okay. Good. This is kind of.
And you know what? I'm not being cheesy by not talking about it, bro. But the thing is, I don't know how to speak without just saying exactly what it's about.
No, I completely honor the creative process. A lot of it happens in the dark, man. And you can't, if you're not ready to talk about it, you just can't talk about it. There's magic in mystery and silence, and I'm fine with that. But I wanted to ask you a quick question here. Now, you were in Firewall with a bunch of A-list actors, right? Harrison Ford, Paul Bettany, Robert Forster is in that movie. What was that like for you?
Virginia Madsen was in it. That movie was it was an education, man, because literally I had nothing to say in the whole film, but I was standing there with a gun the entire time for 8 months. That's how long we shot that movie for 8 months, bro.
Wow.
So I made a gob of overtime money,
Yeah.
And it was an opportunity for a comedian or a comedy actor to be like, perceived a little differently. But I would say that was a major turning point for me in the same way Rat Race was. Rat Race was like, oh, I can be a big actor if I want. That's what I felt.
Right.
In Firewall, meeting Harrison Ford is a trip, dude. That dude's a freaking weirdo, man. In the greatest way.
Okay.
He can absolutely, with the thought, suck all the light out of a room.
Uh-huh.
Or with a smile, fill the room with light. And that's because in his bone marrow, he doesn't give a rat's ass. He's been there.
Right.
And being around the dude, as you know, I'm sure from people you met, here's a guy that I'm taller than. You know what I mean? Here's a guy that all these different things, and I'm like, wow, all the things I ever thought that separated me from him don't exist.
Interesting.
Then in Firewall, Virginia Madsen was nominated for a freaking Oscar during the film for Sideways. No, not Sideways. What was the wine movie?
It was Sideways.
Yeah, Sideways. And her and I hit it off big time, man. Really cool woman, really freaking funky sexy, bro, in person. She'll almost make you trip over what you're talking about. She's got crazy blue eyes and a great body and shit, and she knows it.
Yeah.
Her and I hit it off in a very friendly way. There was no hanky-panky. But we hit it off big time, went on a road trip together, did some crazy, scaffold a cliff and shit together. And here she was in the midst of a ginormous media blitz. And so and she's real humble, because I don't know why, maybe because her brother hit it so fucking big.
Yeah.
While she was still plugging away for all those years.
Yeah.
She was so humble that I was like around the superstar Harrison Ford, who is as normal as you are, as normal as I am, but even a little more so in his humility because he doesn't care if you like him or not.
Right.
It comes off as humility. It's really weird. That's a weird turn the other cheek, powerful thing, you know?
Right.
It's like, so it was really weird being around those two dichotomies, and it made me just go, fuck, I can do whatever I want. Plus, Firewall wasn't that good. Let's be real. Let's be real, man.
I love it.
That was $80 million spent on, you know, I'm going to make Order of Chaos now.
Blow that out of the water. That's funny.
Yeah. So it was an incredible experience, man.
So did you meet Robert? Did you meet Robert Forster?
Yeah, I met him at a couple of parties, you know, and rapped with him for a minute. He's a cool dude because he's never had his head screwed on unstraight because he's a character actor, you know?
Yeah.
He's kind of like, everybody knows who he is, and he's a cool guy.
He's my friend's landlord down in L.A.
What?
Yeah.
That'd be rad, wouldn't it?
Yeah, Robert Forster's his landlord. It's funny. His kid
Imagine if Kathy Bates was your landlord.
Oh, no, please. I got to go to sleep tonight.
Breaking your ankles and shit.
No, I got to get some sleep tonight. So listen, man, this has been a great 2 hours, and I'm really glad that we were able to finally hook this up and get you on the show. And you know, I tried to get, you know, there's a function on this website that allows me to grab an ASIN number from Amazon and then post content so people can either download it or buy it. And I've done this before with authors and books, and I really thought it would be cool if I could get the ASIN number for the movie from Unbox just so people can download it. And I tell you what, man, I tried a lot to get that number to show up. I even called customer support for Blog Talk, and they couldn't help me. For some reason, the system wouldn't recognize that number.
Meant to be.
So anyway,
I don't know.
I want to tell people.
The film is on Netflix. The film's on Netflix. It's on streaming Netflix. It's on Showtime. People can see it if they want.
And you can go to Amazon in the Unbox, and for $1.99, you can rent the film for 7 days. And I think for $11.99, you can actually download and purchase the film and own it on your own.
That's cool.
So $1.99, go out, and some of that eventually has to get back to you and your production team.
Oh, yeah.
So go out and support it. See Order of Chaos. Get into what we're talking about. It is a great debut film. And Vincent, I hope to have you back on someday and talk about your next film, and hopefully the weirdness doesn't get too weird that it prohibits that.
If it does, we'll make a movie about it, man. I don't care.
I'm having a feeling that that's probably what's going to happen, Vincent. I got to tell you.
Yeah. I appreciate it, man, because, you know, you ask questions about the movie and you see the movie more deeply than anyone I've talked to so far, bro. That's just being true. I mean, it's like, and it's no wonder, you know, from listening to the other podcasts. Really good time, man. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks a lot, and do your best to just swim in that surreal ocean down there, man, and take care of that
Where do you live? Where do you live?
I live across the bay from San Francisco, so I'm up in NorCal.
Nice, dude.
Yeah.
So you know what I'm talking about. I want to get out of here. I want to check out some of those trees and weather, man.
Well, anytime you want, man, you come on up and you can hang with me, all right?
Oh, dude, I'll take you up on that. Awesome, bro.
All right, cool. Well, you take care, Vincent. Take care of that cat of yours.
I will. Thanks, Robert.
All right, see ya.
See you, brother.
All right, that was Vincent Vieluf. We are not on the air. We're streaming. So if you happen to pick this up as part of the podcast, it's a 2-hour podcast. I know it's a lot to listen to, but it was great having Vincent on the show. And as you can tell, he's actually a really interesting guy and brings a very interesting sensibility to filmmaking. And I'm looking forward to see what he comes up with next. You can go to Amazon, as I've stated before, and you can download the film through Unbox for $1.99, and it's about an hour and 15, 20 minutes. Moves fast, very watchable, and it'll give you a lot to think about. And I'm telling you, his character John showed up in Arizona over the weekend, and it's ironic and darkly synchronistic in some ways. That I would be speaking with Vincent tonight on the heels of that tragedy. So tomorrow I'll be back on the air. It'll be me, probably looking more at the tragic killing in Arizona and what I think is the genesis behind it, the dark genesis. And until then, use your head to discern what's real and your heart to stay open to what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix, and you've been listening to Far Sunday Nights. See you tomorrow.